Hello, who's this and where are you calling from?
This is Spocko calling from San Francisco.
Hey, Spocko, how you have a very nice voice for I like I need to rephrase that before I make it sound like it's a diss. You have a very radio friendly voice.
A nice radio sound, mounds of sound, stacks of wax, all with you in mind, coming to you from the mighty 1290 coil.
You
That
should
was,
you should like do some spots, man. You should definitely let people know you should put your voice up for grabs.
yeah. I just like to do the funny voices, so that's my thing. So great program, and like you said with Angelo, he was the guy that I wanted to hear from on this. So it was really good, and I by the way, I'm not calling in on video. Partly because I do this under a pseudonym, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about. One of the things I wanted to talk about, if you don't mind, to kind of follow up on the Stop Rush campaign. Would you like to hear about that?
Oh, yes, please do. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I got to be careful that I don't, talk at you. That I want to make sure that I'm kind of having a conversation because I, I have a
Oh
lot
no.
of pent up talking about this stuff. And when I hear about Rush, and I didn't want to write anything. I write, by the way, I write for Digby's Hullabaloo, and as well as on Crooks and Liars, and then my own blog, which is Spocko's Brain, and I wanted to. I went back and looked at some of the things that I've written about, and uh, one of the big things that I know that the reason I wanted Angelo on was because he and the group of people that did the Stop Rush campaign were really amazing. And Richard Meyer, I think, was the guy who kind of helped coordinate this. And I sent you a link to one of the pieces that he wrote on Daily Kos at the time that was explaining what they're doing, and it based a lot of this on the techniques that I developed back in 2006 when I was going after right-wing radio in San Francisco, KSFO. And I still remember, at the time, and that was where I developed a lot of the methodology and techniques that allowed us to go to the advertisers and say, look, they can say what they want, but it's tainting your brand if you associate with this. And one of the things that I did was I would take the horrific clips that they would say, horrible things, violent rhetoric, and then I would show them the audio like right after they would read an ad. So it'd be like them saying, we're going to blow somebody's brain out. And then they would do a live read for United Airlines. And I would
That's
show them,
clever.
yeah, I would show them, I'd say, look, it's like they're wearing the United uniform while they're doing this. And one of the things that I did was I developed a lot of techniques, but also I had to fight a copyright issue because I would take these audio clips and I would send them to the radio station advertisers, and they would go, "What the hell?" And they would go up and they would go to the advertisers and say, "Did they really say this?" And they tried to lie about it and say, "Well, no, it was just a one-time thing." And so I kept sending more of them. But one of the things I found out was that, again, like Angelo said, they didn't know that they were running on this show. And they also didn't know what they were saying right before or after the spots. And so that was one of the things that we did. Well, when I sent that to them, they came after me, and they, had my blog shut down, and they threatened to sue me for, everything I got. And it was a huge deal. And so I had started
And
working
obviously
with,
you had a lot of money from that lucrative blog, right?
yeah, exactly. Uh, the funny thing is, that was one of the things that I paid attention to was I read everything that was to know about copyright law, and I started working with Electronic Frontier Foundation because I knew that they were going to come after me for this. And so that I made sure that my blog met all four of the copyright legal areas so that they couldn't get me for copyright law. And even though I didn't meet any of them, the advertisers left, they were owned at the time, guess what, by ABC Disney, and they then sent me the ABC Disney lawyers sent me a letter, and so the web host, one-on-one hosting, pulled all of the ads. I mean, all the audio clips that I had on my website. They actually shut down my entire website.
Who was coming at you though? Because I know was it the radio stations themselves, or was it because I know Rush Limbaugh like owns his show and probably has his own people. Who was going after you?
The radio station's lawyers. So
Okay.
KSFO was owned by ABC Radio. ABC was owned by Disney. So it was ABC Disney lawyers that came after me and sent a letter, a cease and desist letter, like a pull, you're going to get your copyright stuff, to my web host, one-on-one hosting. And they shut it down. And so I've got a background in communications and PR and stuff. And so I turned it into an international incident. And I made it so that it was a story about the violent rhetoric that they were saying on the show. I compared it to what was going on in Rwanda, they're talking about killing people. Matter of fact, one of the female hosts on KSFO talked about putting a bullseye on Nancy Pelosi's eyes. And they were violently anti-Muslim and bigots and stuff. And they were so, coming after me so aggressively that I was able to flip it around, where it's like going, hey, look, I'm not saying anything about your free speech, but they shut off mine. All I'm just saying to the advertisers, hey, take your money elsewhere. This is bad for your brand. So I then turned it into, like I said, international hosting, because the company that owned the host was one-on-one hosting, and they're out of Germany. I moved the audio clips to a server in Hong Kong. And then there was a business story here. And this is the other thing that Angelo, I thought would be really interesting to hear. I don't want to tell the whole story because one, I feel like I'm, repeating myself, but like you said, the people who are the young kids out there, they don't know these things. But one of the things that we found out was that the company that owned KSFO at the time, ABC Radio, wanted to sell a bunch of radio stations to Citadel. And what I did in terms of getting all these advertisers to leave, it cut into the sale price. So they were just totally freaking out. So one of the things, besides just looking at the individual advertisers, and I went to each of the advertisers and I said, you know what you say on your website, like the value statement, you say, we believe in that. Well, here's the audio clips of the horrible things that they're saying right now. And that was the way that you got into those advertisers. What I didn't have, and which is one of the things that the Stop Rush people put together, was this big database of advertisers, and which also has now been kind of, the next group is Sleeping Giants. Are you familiar with the work of Sleeping Giants?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's another group. And the reason we're kind of going into this history is because one of the things I've learned is there's a constant need to pay attention to not only strategically what to do next, but tactically, the other side, they adapt, and they figure out, and they turn around and they attack. And this is something that I sent you a leak about this, which is, so right now everybody's, praising Limbaugh and stuff like that. And Angela brought up, who's next? It's going to be Tucker Carlson. Well, what is it that we need to do in order to have some kind of impact on Tucker Carlson? And the impact that we had, and by the way, I started off with KSFO. I then taught it to another couple different groups. I worked with Color Change, who were great, by the way. And I worked with them on what's his name? Glenn Beck on the TV. Yeah. And I also worked with Michael Savage. And one of the things that you find out with each of these, and this is a big thing to find out about working with anybody on speech stuff, is that they will flip it around, that they will want to become the victim. Like, oh, these
Right.
bloggers are hitting us. And this is thing, like Sam says all the time, it's the aggrieved, character. And one of the ways that we have to pay attention to is how they are trying to use the, cancel culture thing. Oh, we're cancel culture. One of the reasons that I was effective was I wasn't saying anything about, I wasn't saying, get fired or take them off the air or something. It was just to defund them. And money's what they cared about most. And one of the things I thought was really interesting that Angelo, by the way, great analysis from him on this, which was, so what happens if they lose the money? And I saw what happened when KSFO lost the money. Not only did it cost the share price to go down, the sale price to go down, I kept on them. I kept hammering and I kept writing the Citadel COO. And I said, what you thought was an asset by buying this station is actually a liability. And here's why. And I showed them some clips. The COO of the Citadel Broadcasting happened to be a woman. And so I'd play some of the misogynistic kind of clips there for them. And I would show them how horrible they were. The CEO was Egyptian. And so I played some audio clips of Lee Rogers talking horrible things about Egyptians, And the point of all this was to bring the story up to not just the regular, single advertisers, but to make it as a institutional talk radio is toxic. It is not a good investment. Right. It's not a cash cow. And that was the big switch about Rush in the Sandra Fluke time. He went from being this massive money generating cash cow with $100 million contract to when he had his contract renewed, there was no paying him any money up front. And the other thing that we found out from doing this, besides it cutting off his funding, because he wouldn't get any money in these radio stations, they would shutter him off of the big radio stations to like a third tier lower wattage station in a city, because they didn't want to lose him entirely because they couldn't sell any advertisers. So what I wanted to use was the greed of the ad sales guys going, you're killing me here. I mean, I can't sell any ads on this show. Come on, help me out. So I turned it into this thing where it was harnessing their greed and their desire to make money into this. All right, well, how do we reduce him? Because they wanted to hold on to the audience. They're going to want to hold on to the audience. And as Angela pointed out, they've held on to the audience even though they lose money. I mean, I was astonished about that, $200 billion in debt. I mean, that company should be out of business.
Right. It's shocking they're able to keep it going.
Yeah. So the next thing that we did in terms of this was, I'm surprised Angela didn't talk about, we weren't talking about Fox News, but he has another plan that I think is important to analyze. But after Rush, we went on to, after KSFO, went to Michael Savage and then the Glenn Beck. And I worked with Color of Change. Color of Change had a great program where they were talking about some of the terrible things Glenn Beck was saying. And they're really good at going to advertisers, sponsors, and talking to them, saying, look, going to the HR people, going to the corporate engagement people and say, you don't want to associate with this. So they got 88 advertisers to leave. So, but they kind of stalled. So for 6 months, what I did was I looked up who were the institutional investors in News Corporation. Right. And I contacted them and said, you've got this 2 hours of prime time on Fox News that's not making any money. All they have is just gold ads and in-house ads. Right. You should really ask Rupert about that. So in the third financial quarter, I called in to the financial conference call, and I train executives to talk to the media and do conference calls and CEOs and stuff. So I knew exactly the kind of question that they were going to ask, so I asked Rupert Murdoch. I said, based on the actions of Color of Change, the Glenn Beck shows lost 88 advertisers. And so all there's on is gold ads. How long do you plan to subsidize this until he will become profitable again? Well, Murdoch was like, I don't believe that number. That's not, he's a great lead in and blah, blah, blah. Well, that question allowed the media and opened the door to the salespeople inside who were pissed off because they're going to sell anything. Turns out that there were over 300 advertisers that wouldn't advertise on the Glenn Beck show. And Beck got kicked out, not because the ratings weren't there, but because he couldn't generate any money. And we convinced the institutional advertisers to say, hey, if Rupert wants to pay for his own money, fine. But Murdoch had hidden the loss of money underneath the conglomerate, and the financials don't break it out by numbers. So I just had to refer to it, sideways. So that is one of the ways in terms of getting rid of people. And I know Tucker Carlson they has really low ad sales, but they're still subsidizing him because they want the audience. So right. That's the next step. And this is something that I thought Angela was going to talk about, which is, so what do we do now? Like how, there are multiple financial type tools that you can use. And there are other types of ways. I determined that, FCC and other stuff is kind of dead. It's a tough road to go, but he had a plan to see about contacting the people who are the cable carriers and saying, you're paying a lot extra for Fox. Why are you paying so much money for them?
You know what? When you emailed me earlier, and I knew you were gonna have good information based on those emails, but I think we should do an episode, honestly, on how to. I would like to have you on as a guest in the main interview, so we could do an episode on basically how to successfully boycott the right wing media. I think we should do that. Because this is, I was not expecting a call this level of informative, to be quite honest. This has been great.
Are you saying that I'm talking too long?
No, I'm saying this is deserving of the main interview, honestly, not just a quick call. Continue, finish this part, but then definitely I'm gonna email you, because what I want to do is I want to actually make this a legitimate episode, because what I usually do is I have the main interview, and that's like that's the main cell of the episode, and then I have this extra stuff for this is like the second half of the show.
Wacky, funny guest to call in and say, hey, it's the morning zoo in the afternoon.
Yeah, it's like more fun. I think this is. Yeah. I think people need to pay attention to what you're saying, and I'm worried it's going to get lost at the end of an hour-long interview that we already did, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Not sorry, but
no. Please. Say what you were going to say about the next step when it comes to like Fox and how to boycott cable, so people who are listening now get it. But I think I would really like to have this on as the main. If you would like to, I'd love to have you on.
Yeah, well, and I want to talk to Angela about that as to get more details about how to do that. But the other thing that I wanted to say is a third area that you're actually the show that I want to talk to about, because you knew a lot about Gamergate and the internet stuff. And I, besides having, understanding of the business stuff, I'm also very interested in technology and how technology works and what we can know about people. But the thing that I wanted to point out, and which was in 2014, I think it was, the people who did all the work on Stop Rush, that reputation management person, Glick or whatever, he came after them. He threatened them. And just like I was threatened, I mean, that scared the crap out of me. I mean, it's like people say, my brother-in-law, they're going to take all your money, and it was, I mean, that's the kind of thing that they do, the power of not just legal stuff. I mean, is legal stuff, but it's also the threat that we will expose you. So I did all this under pseudonym, and I did that on purpose, and I was really careful about it. Well, the last time I talked about the work and the role of what we did with KSFO, I got an email from one of the radio hosts who lost their job, and basically saying, I know who you are, I know where you live, I know your wife's name, I know, and basically saying, yeah, go ahead, come out, and we will come after you again. And, that's the frightening thing. And and I did a lot of research about, threats and true threats and the kinds of threats that we know that we hear about, death threats. Okay. Well, there's also other kinds of legal threats and things like that. And whenever we're effective as activists, the right wing comes after us in multiple fashions. And one of the big things that I'd like to talk about is how do you go about dealing with these online threats, these social media threats, these, video, whatever. There are financial tools that can be done to go after people, and there's other ways to do it. And I think this is a big thing that people don't talk about. And we talked about all these people that said we're afraid that the right wing the Republican senators were afraid of the base, the Trump base, that they will kill us. Well, women online and social media and other places, they've known this for a long time. And I really think that we need to have some kind of program and plan to bring the people to justice who are doing these kinds of threats and using social media to facilitate it. And that's why I still, go by Spocko. I mean, I'd love to be able to, get credit for I and Angelo and the people at the great people who did Stop Rush. I mean, this cost the industry hundreds of millions of dollars and changed the face of advertiser funded things. So much so that they had to go to dark money and like a grateful billionaire to put them on the air. And I talked to Jane Mayers about this, and I think this is another area that needs to be dealt with. Is they're going to want to hold on to that audience even if they're not profitable. So what can we do next? And one of the things is to help understand they're threatening us in multiple ways when we're effective. Well, that's another way to turn around. Is like, okay, you come after me for this, we're going to come after you, and we're going to cost you money, or you're going to lose your job. But then we got to worry about them coming to our house and shooting us. So that's the other reason why I don't talk about this. So that's the other area that I would like to talk about. And I really want to talk to you because you knew about Gamergate and you knew about the misogyny, the sexism, and the threats that came out. And technically, there's a lot of ways that people give out their information all the time. Like I could find out who everybody is and where they live now. And the right wing will turn around and do it on us. So we have to protect ourselves for it, but also we can do it for them. And we need to just know what is, when they're really being true threats and how to deal with that. So, I mean, that's kind of a downer thing, but, like your call with the TPUSA woman, the gun girl, which was brilliant, by the way. And I tell people, listen to that. I have friends in Nebraska who were, one of them got fired because of a TPUSA, woman set up a table, and this woman, the professor, she, flipped her off, and the right wing outrage machine went after her and got her fired. And they didn't understand that this is what TPUSA does. This is their shtick. And the people at the universities at UNL just thought, well, it's just, it must be a big deal because, we're getting calls from people from all over that this is horrible. It was ginned up on purpose. And when I heard her explain that and how they did it, I was like going, these universities need to know that this is a scam. This is what they do. So those are the kinds of things. And like, you're the best for some of this, but it's really about helping train activists and understand and prepare for what's coming next and evaluate them. And not only, what works, but also how they're going to get you and how they adapt, because that is a big part that gets lost in this thing, which is, they're not stupid. If you interrupt their money supply, they're going to come after you, and you got to be prepared for it.
Right. I mean, first of all, thank you for the kind words. Second of all, absolutely right. I mean, this is the way conservatives fight now in these. It's really more of a culture war thing than policy thing. Like no one's calling up your office trying to get you fired for some sort of policy belief or political. It is totally ingrained in the culture wars that conservatives like to fight, because I mean that's really all they have at this point. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people need to, even outside of the political world, need to understand the tactics and bad faith that goes on here. so they aren't firing good people who are getting swept up in these sort of campaigns to get people fired and ruin their lives. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
one of the new things from, it's not so new, but you brought up Gamergate, and since then it's sort of evolved in one of the things you see all the time now. Anyone that a conservative of a certain stripe doesn't like, what's the new charge now? They call that person a pedophile. A pedophile. They call him a pedo. That's the new thing now, to sort of tarnish people's reputation with these sorts of names, name calling, and especially, bring in QAnon and the whole Save Our Children campaign that sprung from that, and the whole belief they have of
Mm-hmm.
the child trafficking.
Right.
They know that this sort of thing gets people's emotions. It really pulls at people's strings. So this is the one that I've really noticed they're grabbing onto now, and I don't think people are ready for it. I think there's going to be some real charges that go out there for people. I mean, they sort of already tried to do it in some fashion with the director of Guardians of the Galaxy, James Gunn, based on some old tweets he had. Mike Cernovich tried to do this to Sam Cedar,
Well, to Sam, yes.
based on a Roman Polanski tweet
Right.
attacking Polanski that Cernovich tried to reframe as being pro Polanski. And it falls directly into what I'm saying. This is the new thing now. They're going to, they've seen what they could do to get people fired, and they see that in some sense, people are catching on. I mean, unfortunately, people aren't catching on via the same method that you did, where you sent my podcast to everybody. That'd be great if everyone learned it from my podcast. But
Right.
but I think people are catching on to some of the older forms, and the new thing now is, what honestly is more damning to someone than to claim that they are a pedophile, or that there's something shady or illicit in their past that has to do with children. I mean, you
Right.
will ruin
Right.
people by doing that, and they know that, and they're going to try their hardest to continue with that one, I think.
Right. And in that, this is one of the things, like for my friend who are activists as friends, and we're talking about Tucker Carlson. Okay. So, my activist friends, I tell them now, when you're out doing any kind of action, always be recording who comes up to you, what they say, those kind of things, because people are not always aware of just how much information they give out. So, my friend Amanda, who is really big into gun violence prevention, she had besides being, she was one of the teachers who was targeted by Turning Point USA, but she had gone to the head of the NRA's Legislation Action Committee's house and protested with signs outside of his house and outside of his wife's business. And they freaked out. This is Chris Cox freaked out, and they had the police come after them. They didn't do anything wrong. They were very clear about this. But his wife came out of the business, and smacked the phone out of her hand. But I made sure that she, had other stuff recorded. Well, then about, I don't know how much later, Tucker Carlson sent a producer to Lincoln, Nebraska, flew a producer to Lincoln, Nebraska to come after her, showed up outside of her house and followed her, this producer, and her dropping her daughter off at school. Well, the whole point was, you come up to the producer, come up to him and say, you say it's okay to go to their house, so what's wrong? Isn't it okay to come to my house? Well, Amanda's really smart. And so she was very calm. She didn't lose her temper, but she turned on the camera and she recorded like I suggested. So before he got back to Tucker Carlson's show in order to do a spot, I got the video up on Crooks and Liars so we could show what had happened. Okay. And then later you see, Tucker Carlson playing the victim. They came to my door. They tried to pound on the door. So this is, again, the thing is, anything that they do, that we do that's effective, they'll turn around and do to us. And then they will claim that, they're being attacked all the time. So this is not only to be prepared, but then turn it around on them. This is like a gift. When I was sued, I looked at it, oh, this is a gift. This is a news event. This is like, I can turn it around into, hey, I'm the real victim here. Shut down my blog. So that's the problem with being an activist. I mean, you put yourself out there, you're effective, and it scares the crap out of them, and they come after you, your family, and your friends. So my theory now is be prepared for the death threats. Be prepared. I mean, all these activists, be prepared for the nasty things like that, and turn it around and show that these people, find out who they are, show that they violated the terms and condition. If it turns into a true threat, then you can do legal actions, civil actions, and criminal actions, all of which can go to the point where you're saying, look, we gave you an opportunity. We said, please don't do this. But if they double down like they love to do, you can show that they had intent. And this is going to be a big thing. I think Angela said earlier about how, Rush Patel is being funny or entertaining. This is one of their great kind of things they did. You need to know that it wasn't a joke, because when you give them the opportunity to say, you're joking, right? And they turn around and say, no, I really do want to come after you. That's the way that you can use to have that as leverage. But that takes a lot of thought, information, and understanding of how the system works to then use it as leverage to get them to stop. And if they don't stop after you give them a chance, then you can push harder and, cost them a job. But then, of course, as any abuse person knows, well, and then you're really pissed off if you cost them their job. So, but, there's ways we can do this across state lines with a group of lawyers and another group. And I'm sorry, I'm going on to further things, but this is the other thing that I really think that people need to understand is, if we're going to go try and get justice for the people who have guns and come after Congress people like that, we need to have a plan to deal with the people who are going to be, coming after them. We need, like, the untouchables. They're going to come after us if we're just trying to point out that they were insurrections and they tried to kill people.
Right. No, absolutely. Spocko, this has been a great call. I'm serious, and this isn't to get you off the line. I swear to you, I really want you to come on as a guest. I'll reach out to you and we'll get something set up, because I think that especially that first half of what you talked about, because honestly, a lot of that stuff, because obviously talk radio. Obviously, I was working for the Majority Report for the Rush Limbaugh's peak, but most of that business was sort of it's seen its heyday when I was into this. So you were really honestly telling me some things that I wasn't even all that aware of. I want to get you on this show to talk about that for sure, for the main interview portion at the first half of the show. I'm going to reach out to you and we're going to set that up.
Cool. Thanks, and great shows. Really appreciate it, and I'm so happy to be able to talk to you guys and just say hi to all the subscribers. And like I said, I really have been a fan of yours, and you're always like months ahead of where other people are eventually, and I think Sam noted that too. And now it's like, oh, yeah, he's good. Yeah. Anyway, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.